Hello, this is Julia from Mind You, and we're here for another episode of Mind of the Month. And look who's with me, it's Theresa Destrebecq. Yay, hi Theresa.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Sure. As you know by now, if you've been watching these episodes, I'm aiming to bring to you people who are dear to me, or who are super interesting, or who just bring something to the table which I'm hoping is exciting for the listener or the person who's watching. So today with Theresa, we've got someone here who I know since about 2 years. And Theresa lives in the south of France with her family. And she's been on a wonderful journey to finding out how she calls herself at the moment. And let's say she is calling her business Thrive Within. And with that, there is so much she does. So basically, she gets her clients into action. That's what she does. And I figured by spending time with you and talking to you that you're very passionate about teaching and coaching. So that as a combination, you deliver to in-person or virtually all around the world to the people who you attract and who seek your advice and counseling and coaching and teaching. And with that, I also found that you're an author on Thrive Global.
I am. Yes. Yes.
And then that was fascinating. And also, you run a book circle, which is increasing in numbers and obviously a global achievement. So you love the teaching, and with that, you love teaching women specifically, coaching them, and for them to reconnect with their passionate and confident and empowered self. Is that about right?
That is about right. Yes. That is very much exactly what it's about.
Great.
Thank you. You did your homework.
So really what I found about you is that you love the fact that you come from powerless to powerful.
Yes.
Yeah. And also there was a lot about living self-full. I love all that. That's brilliant. Do you want to add something to that?
Well, I guess I can. So one of the things that I find that happened my own journey is that I had created my whole sense of self outside of me. So it was all from other people, what they thought of me, from jobs, from titles, from salaries, and it was all external. And when things fell apart in my life a while back, I didn't have a foundation to stand on because I didn't have that fullness, that self-fullness.
Yeah.
And so now that I've come out the other side, my whole world in supporting and coaching other women is to make sure that that foundation is solid, that their self is full, and it's coming from inside and then going out.
Oh, amazing. I'm sure you do a wonderful job, and people will be very glad to have you, as I'm happy to have you here with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today's interview will be all about how to ask powerful questions. That's the aim. And oh my God, when I prepared for this, I was thinking, this is a big topic. And so we're aiming to just look at it from two perspectives, you and I, to create something where the listener or the person watching can take something away, where they rethink how they just take things for granted, or how they can actually use questions in their life to empower them, right? And so I was thinking way back, when you are a child, you keep asking all these questions. You keep asking, why? And I know from my children, why is a constant question. So, and then over time, when I developed more coaching skills, it was a fact that actually we move away from that why a lot. Would you agree to that? I mean, there is something about when we ask why questions, that has an effect on us where we maybe dive into a story which we're telling ourselves. So there might be another element. Maybe you can tell me how you see that. How is a why question important, and why would we be able to ask a different question more powerfully?
Well, it's interesting. I think when children ask why, they're asking out of curiosity. They're really trying to understand the world around them. And I think once we get into an adulthood, there's a different frame around that why. And that why often is not coming from curiosity, but it's coming from a place of judgment or a place of negativity. Or sometimes, and it's often, sometimes it's a why me. And I think that if we actually look at it more globally and get back to the curiosity, it can become really powerful again. It's just the lens through which you're using the why. There's a really famous man by the name of Simon Sinek who wrote a book called Start With Why. And that is really the power and the purpose behind the why. And I think that can be really amazing. But when we ask why, when we're looking for, when there's a sense of judgment or negativity around it, you can have a very different response to it. So why can be powerful, but it can also be very disempowering as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can hear that. And that is a really good point with Simon Sinek there, who is so famous for his TED Talk about that as well. So for looking that up, that's a good starting point to research as well.
Sorry, can I add one more thing?
Go for it.
It's interesting, when I went to coaching school, and I don't know if it was the same for you, but we were actually coached or counseled not to use why with our clients.
Yes.
Because it often is going towards a single answer. So it's not opening people up to a multitude of answers. And also because there sometimes is a judgment behind it. So it's interesting to having learned that, but then also have this other perspective on it as well.
Yeah. So the why is sometimes, as you say, when we can distinguish between a story and judgment, then why can get us back to curiosity, and that's great. But if it becomes a story, then we tell ourselves, why always me? Why am I always the one who is having a difficulty with finding a job, find a client, having a problem with my children, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's this kind of related, then we always find reasons, isn't it? So our brain then gives us answers to that question. And this is what I'm particularly interested in. What we ask ourselves, our brain wants to respond to. So it's massively important that we pay attention, I believe, to what we ask ourselves, because that can lift us up to a new ground of thinking or put us down into the actual always knowing, but not the really prosperous, not the really fruitful stuff. So we want to go into that thinking, what is it that lifts us up into our higher thinking sphere where we can access new stuff, right? So, I mean, we shared an experience in LA a few weeks ago with the Mindvalley Reunion, and there were so many questions shared and so many teachers on stage were asking us stuff, and our mind was going, whoa. With Dr. Shafali Tsabary, she also questioned different institutions, didn't she?
Yes.
And so she led us into thinking, hang on a second, do we just take it for granted, or why don't we just question institutions like religion, relationship, beauty, reality, or whatever? Can't remember all of them, but that was a fascinating process, isn't it? With questioning institutions. What would you like to add there?
Well, no, I mean, the one thing that I thought was really just the questions can really bring us down. The questions that lead us can make us feel small, or they can make us feel expansive.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we don't realize that we're asking questions or we're being driven by questions. They become a habit. So when Dr. Tsabary was asking different types of questions, we got from here, this is just the way it is, to, oh my gosh, it can be and look and feel, and you can experience something totally different. And all it was the same institution, but a shift in the question.
Yeah. So it was actually looking at big things, breaking it down, and therefore making it expansive and open. So it's a bit like starting to question everything, isn't it? So when you start questioning everything, it becomes a real, detective work of what is it really what one believes. And, I guess the way we can look at it today in our conversation is here, as we want to empower the person to ask themselves powerful questions, is what they question will lead them to an answer, or will lead them to something they bring into their life. Would you agree to that? We attract then something. So are there things you found are really helpful for you to do with questioning clients, or even in your work with, you come from teaching background as well, and questioning children, or having the questions from children, and then also asking children questions is part of your DNA, I guess.
Maybe, yeah.
So how do you use that at the moment when you work with people?
Well, one of the things that I think is really important is actually to pay attention to have awareness around what are the questions that are driving us. Because as you say, we often are asking ourselves questions that maybe are going to lead us to a smaller part. And sometimes people ask questions, and really after you ask a question, sometimes it's good to check and say, do I really want to know the answer to that?
Mm-hmm.
Just pausing and saying, do I want to know the answer to that? Because sometimes we don't want to know the answer to it. But if we shifted the question, then we'd be like, oh yeah, I really do want to know the answer to that, because that answer would elevate me, would up-level me, would expand my perspective, whereas the other answer would cause me to shrink. Earlier, you gave an example about like, why are they doing this to me, or something like that. And you might ask that question, but do you actually want to know the answer? I don't know. So instead, you could ask, shift the question around to something different. And I think one of the things that's really powerful about coaching or teaching or mentoring is just having someone outside of you to ask questions. Because if we are not paying attention to the questions inside of our head, we will continue on that loop. Mm-hmm. We're not actually thinking. We're just repeating a loop that we've probably repeated hundreds of times before. But when somebody else comes from the outside and asks a totally different question, then that loop stops, and we're like, oh wait, there's something else here. And then that could be a different way, a different avenue, and a whole different path can open up that you didn't see before.
So that is so true when it comes to all relationships and everyone we deal with ourselves or with others. And I wonder, when we ask questions, they are either related towards us, or we ask someone else. So, when we can either sit there and ask us a question, or come up with a really cool question for someone else to rethink, reflect, and break through something where they feel limited with. So isn't it that we work with so many people who find themselves stuck in something? They are stuck. And with the right question, and that's just a really odd term, the right question, because I'm sure there are many, but I'm still to find the right question for everyone.
Well, maybe a different question.
Yeah.
Whether right or wrong, it's just different. So
when we ask one of those questions, that can just trigger in the other person a completely new response. Mm-hmm. And so that they, out of stuckness, become at least a little bit shaken in their seat. And so is there something, have you learned something, how to get there? Is it intuition, how you do that? Or is there something, do you go by facial expression in the other person? Do you have a hunch? How do you do that?
Oftentimes I think it's just intuition. It's a hunch. It's something that I feel. And I often think that the question that pops up is a question that I potentially have heard that shook me up in the past. And maybe it's not the exact same question, but it's similar enough that I knew it was provocative enough for me to wake up, that I know it will be provocative also for somebody else to wake up. But I also really try to ask different kinds of questions, because when we just stay on the surface, people will just stay on the surface. So really getting to the deep. I have a mentor who talks about going into the basement. So really helping people to go in the basement. And a lot of people don't want to go in the basement because it's dark and it's dirty and it's full of cobwebs. But that, I think, is where the work happens. Once you can clean that up, then everything else can shift up above.
So here you're talking about things where people are stuck, and they might want to look at things where they want to shift habits, beliefs, stuff about themselves to get out of that situation. Either they can't find, like, they want to change their career, but they don't know how, and they believe they are doing it for a certain reason, but they can't find an answer why it is that they are the way they are, right? Things like that. So that they find themselves in a tricky situation with themselves to want to get out. And in those moments, it's really helpful to obviously have someone outside who can ask you these questions. So that is the beauty of coaching or mentoring, because it is so much tougher to ask yourself these questions honestly. I mean, let me just mention, there is one thing, and you have heard of her as well, Byron Katie.
Yes.
She is the lady of 4 questions, isn't he? Four questions and a turnaround. And so she brings a concept into that. Have you used that a lot, these 4 questions? I
have used it a lot. And I do. I mean, I use like a variation of it with clients quite a lot. And sometimes people are like, oh my gosh. And sometimes people are very resistant to it.
Yeah. Would you like to say these questions, what they are?
You're putting me on the spot. I need to make sure I remember them.
I can as well, no worries. It's just because I find it so interesting. Earlier you said that you gotta really think if you want to hear that answer. And that led me to thinking of Byron Katie, because she asked these 4 questions where she says, is it true? And then what I like about it is that she stops. There is silence. And that's what she is about, isn't it? It's a meditative, contemplative approach. And that's what you said. Do you really want to hear that answer? Just sit with it. And that's what she does. So she asked this first question, is it true? And then she goes, is it really true? And doesn't she then ask, how does it make you feel when you think that question, or when you think that thought? Yeah. And then is it then the turnaround already?
No, it would be, who would you be without that thought?
Who would you be without that thought? Amazing. That is just a brilliant question, isn't it? So she came up with these 4 questions. There's a whole story behind that. And then she turns it around to find a new approach, to have a new perspective of it. So that is a very powerful thing. And we might want to have this underneath in the comments below as a people reference then. So that's great. And so that's when people are stuck, that they can find themselves to get out of there. I also have seen, where is my little sheet here? There was a guy, Robert Holden. He is a Hay House author. He's very much linked with Louise Hay. And he is calling himself, or there's a book from him, Shift Happens. And I stumbled upon these questions, and he said they are life questions. And this is the section where it then would be more about a reflection and growing part of you. How can you grow more to the person you want to be? And I know that you are a big fan of that as well, where, you know, you want to bring yourself into focus of what you focus on. And before we speak about how you do that in your life at the moment, I stumbled upon these questions which he asked his wife as reflecting on how was the year like it was her birthday, and he said, so how was your year? How have you been? What did you do last year? And that's just too much. That's too big, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And so he broke it down to self-love aspects, where he said, tell me some ways you loved yourself last year.
Mm.
And then another one in growth, how did you grow last year?
Mm-hmm.
And so I really like that he goes into specific details of elements in our life which we know are so important, aren't they? And then there's another one of learning, healing, and courage. Courage, for instance, how were you brave? And I think that's really, really great, having these tools and questions to not also come out of stuckness with questions, but also to grow and to reflect.
Mm-hmm.
So in your life, do you want to add to that?
Well, it also made me think of Vishen Lakiani's 3 most important questions that he asks.
Yeah.
Around what contribution do you want to make? How do you want to grow? And what experiences do you want to have in life? Mm-hmm. And we often don't think about that. We get so stuck in the nuances of, just job and kids and that we don't think bigger about what else we want to experience in life and how else we want to grow and how else we want to contribute. So
true. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it seems to me that it's worth taking time for questioning. It sounds like it, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, I think it is. I usually have a question that drives me. Mm-hmm. I have a new question now, but I used to have a different question that would drive me, and it shifts depending on where I am in life. And this is like that drive me throughout the day or before a client call. How can I be the best client, or who do I need to be for the next hour with this client so that they can really get the most out of our work together? So I often have questions that I ask myself, throughout the day. But then I have a big one that usually guides me. You want me to share more?
Yeah, share with us. So how do you do that then? You ask yourself in the morning, or how do you come up with the question?
So how do I come up with it? It's really about, for me, the bigger question is, who do I want to be in this world, or how am I going to, what's my purpose here? That's the bigger question.
Okay, great.
That's bigger question. But then I have a more specific question. And so the question right now at the moment is, whose lives have I impacted today? And that is it's in a big form, and it's in my office. So the moment I go into my office, I see it, and it's a reminder. And I also have it as a reminder in my phone. So it pops up in my phone throughout the day at different times. And it also, right before I go to bed, at 9:30, my phone will go beep. And again, I will look at it. And it's a way for me to remember that I'm here to contribute, to make an impact. And when I can be specific, be like, okay, I touched this person today. I touched this person's life. I touched this person's life. I impacted this person today. I go to bed feeling very proud of myself. And if at the end of the day, I'm like, oof, I don't think I impacted anybody's life today, then I know that I can reset and recommit the next day. But that's my question. But I often work with when I'm working with clients, they're often, as you said, feeling stuck, and there's usually one attribute that they want to embody more often. And so maybe it's courage, maybe it's strength, maybe it's, I don't know, they want to be happier. Maybe it's happiness, because your motto is happiness is homemade. So it could be, what would happier Theresa be doing right now? What would happy Theresa be thinking right now? What would happy Theresa be feeling right now? What would happy Theresa be saying right now? And so I have clients that have put that up around, or put that on their phone as a reminder. Maybe it's not happy, but whatever it is, their word. And that is the powerful question that can drive them to make different decisions.
And that's really cool, because that is the focus then, and it channels our vision onto something specific, and we can make ourselves more concentrated and specific for our actions. And it's kind of an intention set for the day and how we go through our interactions. That's brilliant, Theresa. I really love that. So if we sum up here for everyone listening, then obviously it's important to ask questions which bring us forward. And that would just be great if people listening could practice that for themselves and also with others. So that it also entails good listening. Obviously, when we ask someone else a question, it's necessary to listen first. But I love it the way you described pulling these questions together. And so, yeah, so people could just do that in the end, isn't it? Have an actionable item here for them to take away, finding out what they want to bring more into their life, or where they want to work on at the moment, and then formulate a question and put it into their technical devices, mirrors, wherever they want to write it down, so to remind themselves and to be on focus, right?
Yes, exactly. And the one thing that I want to add, and you and I know this, but to focus on the being first before the doing and the having.
Yes, that's lovely. Thanks for including me into that. Oh, fabulous, Theresa. That was wonderful.
Well, thank you.
If people have more questions, then I'm sure they can reach out to you. If they feel drawn to you for any kind of mentoring. I know you've got a program out there, which you start in a new format right now. So people can find that on your webpage.
Yep.
And we put your webpage underneath so that everyone can find you. That would be great. And also a link to your book circle.
Yeah, it'd be great. Feel free to join the book circle. There's over 300 women.
Wow.
And we just read books together all about, feeling more empowered in our lives and in our relationships. So feel free to join us. That would be great.
Amazing. All right, everyone watching. I hope you like this and keep watching. Bye.
Bye.